Hi, this is Phil McCauley for Labour Business TV, and today I'm delighted to welcome Dave Mountford, one of the co-founders of the Forum of British Pubs. Dave, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Now, you've been a publican for the last 12 years and in catering all of your life, really, as a professional. Before we get into the subject matter, what's it been like for you in your business during the pandemic and now as we start to face gradually coming out of lockdown?
So I suppose the simple word has been uncertainty, probably more than anything else. We are luckier than most in that we are a free house, privately owned, and therefore, and also we have a rent that I would describe as being fair and equitable, and therefore we have been quite profitable in the 8 years that we've been here. But to sum up very simply, 8 years, local community pub, great following, very good turnover, we're very proud to say. Even myself and my wife have been and are becoming increasingly more worried as we get closer to the opening, as to see exactly how things are going to be in the new normal.
Yes, well, it's a very big personal risk for everybody, the people that run the businesses, the staff who work there, and of course the customers, and it's been a terrible situation for everybody. Now, how are we doing in terms of the safety and the regulations and everything that's going on around that? Should people feel safe going into this area?
The problem we have is the fact that there are a lot of people who run pubs at the moment who simply don't know what the guidelines are going to be. Our government, unfortunately, have not been fantastically perhaps fast and swift in getting those guidelines together. And in fact, Mr. Scully, the small business minister, this morning live on TV said that those guidelines won't be available for a number of weeks. So publicans who are in a great deal of debt, a huge amount of uncertainty, simply don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. We're taking good advice. We're speaking to health and safety experts, but they don't know what to do either. And a pub needs time to get themselves organised, to get stocked up, to do all of the things that need to be done to keep our staff and our customers safe, and make sure that the experience when we finally do open is as good as it can be, to kind of replicate what the true British booze is all about, to be honest with you. So it's difficult, and unfortunately we're not getting the best level of support from the people we should be right now.
Well, we all can't wait for a pint, and cheers to the idea that we can come back safely. But let me turn now to your organisation. Tell me about co-founding this organisation, what it's all about, what your principal aims and objectives are.
So the Forum of British Pubs was launched last week, a week ago today, and it is a combination of myself and the Forum of Private Business, which is managed by Ian Cass. Ian has run the Forum for a number of years now. The Forum has been in existence for 30 odd years, and has a diverse group of members over a variety of different organisations, but they're all small businesses, many of whom are publicans. And Ian has been working with me for the last 3 or 4 years on our ongoing campaign to reform the pub industry, the tied pub industry specifically, although we are and do support free of tie operators. So we realised, and have done for some time, that our campaign has been largely ignored by government. So because primarily government kind of only speaks to large organisations, and the brewing industry is an extremely large organisation. It has a lot of clout and a lot of money, and shouts louder than we were. So we recognise the importance of working together on setting this up, primarily to give licensees running pubs a voice. It's a member services organisation, so we have a number of packages that we can provide members at a discounted rate. But to be honest with you, Phil, at this moment in time, whilst that is important to licensees going forward, once they open and once they get trading, the most important thing right now is having that voice, so that the thousands of publicans out there who are literally fighting for survival will be able to know that their concerns and their fears are being communicated back to government.
Now, if you were called to the Bays Committee at some point in the near future to give evidence and talk about your issues around the tide trade, what kind of things would you want to say to Darren Jones MP and the members of that committee?
Well, the Bays Committee is vital, and you know, I'd welcome the opportunity of meeting Mr. Jones. I've been privileged to give evidence to 2 Business and Industry Select Committee inquiries, both chaired by previous Labour MPs, and the issue relating to the reform of the industry has very much been driven by that committee. The first investigation was in 2004, there was a further one in 2008, 2009, and finally in 2011. And all that work by the Bays Committee resulted in legislation coming into effect in 2016. The message from Mr. Jones would be that that legislation, which promised so much, has delivered nothing. It has failed completely, and in fact, has actually made the situation considerably worse for tenants, as the pub owning businesses have pretty much ignored it and gone on in their merry way, reaping havoc. And the message, I suppose, the crystallising the messages that the Bays Committee would be able to see quite easily would be that the crisis has crystallised the problems within the industry instantly. Tenants that were making no money at all have suddenly overnight lost their income. They are still being required by these pub companies, which are supposed to have been regulated by government, to pay large sums of rent, whilst albeit deferred. That is still a debt that is accruing. And basically the message would be that the crisis in the industry is literally going to be resulting in pubs shutting, and already is resulting in pubs shutting all over the country right now.
So the aim of the legislation originally, when it was introduced in 2016, was to strike a fairer arrangement, in parenthesis, with the tenants and those running the pubs under these schemes, under the tide schemes. But it's just been largely ignored. What kind of changes would you like to see happen if either the law were implemented or amendments were made to the present Act?
Well, the law is secondary legislation, so it can be changed very easily. And right now, it's been in the process of a year-long review, in which overwhelmingly everybody who responded to that review stated that it needed to be completely overhauled, including the PCA, the Pubs Code Adjudicator themselves, interestingly enough. The legislation needs to have teeth. It needs to be a proper threat. It needs to make fines, implement fines against these companies who act sometimes in ways which are verging on criminal at times. It needs to provide clarity, which is it's failed to do. And it needs to be a body that tenants and publicans are confident of going to, knowing that the pub owning businesses will be concerned about what the Pubs Code Adjudicator has to say, which at the moment is pretty much the equivalent of threatening to make them stand in the naughty corner, which is no exaggeration, I'm afraid.
Do you think members of the public who use tide pubs have any real understanding of the apparent business inequality that exists when we just go for our pint with our friends?
It's getting better, there's no doubt about it. And a current crisis, I think, has cemented the knowledge in certainly local pubs, people who run pubs who are a part of our campaign. Definitely their customers are more aware. But overall, no. I mean, the way pubs are rented, for example, is something that is quite difficult for not people to understand, but certainly for people to appreciate the fact that it is based on a profits means method, which is literally a finger in the air set by the pub company, quite often never achievable, is something that is quite alien to customers who are used to rents in retail apartments being set on square footage, for example. And certainly if the average punter was aware that the average pub company made around about 80 grand a year out of the average pub, whilst the average tenant made less than 10, that is something, a simple fact that they would be stunned, I'm sure, to appreciate. And that's the root of the problem. but that's not Dave Mountford saying that. That's not Dave Mountford of the Forum of Pubs saying that. That's for government inquiries, and that's why these companies were regulated. So you know, this is not a campaign that is based on sort of anecdotal evidence. This is a campaign that drove legislation into place and was backed up and reinforced by a vast amount of evidence-based information, which persuaded the governments to very reluctantly implement sanctions against an industry which they have always been traditionally quite close to.
And given what everybody's been through worldwide with coronavirus and the corollary of all of that, do you think there's a fresh opportunity now to come back to this and look for a better deal, more equality, a better implementation that's fairer?
Phil, I think it's vital, and it cannot be stressed that that better deal was needed almost within 6 months of the Pubs Code Adjudicator launching the service. So weak and ineffectual was it becoming, and we have been campaigning to have that done 3 years ago, and I've personally been involved in lobbying government to have that done way back then. So you know, it's not it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that was this issue not to be revisited literally now, then 50% of pubs in this country will not be opening, and probably another 25% will be opening and then shutting within literally 18 months of attempting to reopen. The legislation exists to tackle this issue. At the moment, that legislation only covers 6 companies. And one of the things that we've been arguing strongly is the fact that it should be open to anybody who runs a pub owning business and operates the tied business model. So this isn't just about those regulated companies, it's about the whole of the industry. Because rents rents relating to pubs, as I've said, are based on a calculation and comparable data. So if a rent comes down within a public house, then the one next to it can use that as a comparable in an argument going forward. So it's crucial right now that we get that clarified and rents are renegotiated based on the fair maintainable trade that a pub is facing going forward, which, as we all know, is going to be half of what it was back in March.
And finally, if you were having your friendly pint, socially distanced, at the bar today with the Prime Minister, and you had an opportunity to bend his ear about this, what would you say? What would you advise him to do now about this massive problem?
Well, I could be sitting and I could be criticising him heavily for the last 10 years in which we've lost perfectly viable pubs, probably around about 10 or 11,000 of them in that period of time. But really what I'd be preferring to do is inviting him to work with the Forum of British Pubs, listening to what we have to say and working with us so that we can work together along with parties right across the political spectrum, because this is a cross-party issue, to save small businesses and to save community pubs, which otherwise will be sold off to Tesco's or Co-op or social housing or turn into car parks and all the other terrible things that happen to them and have happened to them over the previous decade. Pubs can be viable. I've proved that myself. I'm sitting in a free house which was owned by a pub owning business and is now, or was, a very successful business, and we hope to be going forward. So, you know, I'd be inviting him, as he is a known lover of a pint every now and again, certainly his dad is. I'd be inviting him very much to be sitting down and working with us, rather than ignoring us, which is what's happening at the moment. So that's the purpose of what we've set out to achieve. We want to be working with everybody on this issue.
Dave, thanks very much. Good luck to you. Stay safe as you move towards reopening. Same to everybody in this industry. And I hope you get everything you're looking for. Thanks for being with me today, and cheers.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.